Everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business Live. Looking forward to talking with Lauren Smyth. Lauren, it's great to see you again. Have you back on the show. An economics and journalism student at Hisdale College. Since signing her first publishing contract at age 13, she's written 3 young adult action adventure novels, coded 2 story-based video games, and started a blog enjoyed by readers and writers around the world. When she's not writing, you can listen to her podcast, The Grammar Minute writing podcast, which is a great podcast. And her new book is coming out shortly. By the time many people listen to this, it will be out. Warsaw. So, Lauren, it's great to see you. You're so accomplished.
Good to see you again.
You've done so much, in college. I'd love to talk about, what you got out of college and what you had to teach yourself in college. I think that's something that I think a lot of my son's about to graduate in a month, like you are. And I think it's a lot of things. It's starting to kind of come to that realization of like, oh, wow, like maybe they didn't really teach me how to interview, how to answer questions, how to do,
Yes.
all of these things. And so shed some light on that.
So I would say one of the biggest things I didn't learn in college, or at least that wasn't taught to me, was time management skills. I found, you go to class for 2 hours a day, and then you have 14 hours left in the day that you have to manage yourself. No one's telling you when to go to bed. No one's telling you when to get up. The only thing they're telling you is when to go to class. And often in college, they're not even really all that strict about that. So you have to motivate yourself, and you have to know exactly where you're supposed to be at every given time. That was a challenge freshman year. I remember a lot of time spent sitting at my desk going, okay, what do I do now? What order do I do all these tasks in? I've just been given a list and an infinite amount of time, and now I have to figure out what to do. So I really learned how to make a to-do list for every day, how to write everything down and not depend on my memory. And that has really taken a lot of stress off over the years as I've gotten better about writing everything down and scheduling everything. It's just so helpful to be able to look at a piece of paper and go, okay, I know exactly what I have to do right now. I know exactly where I need to be, and I don't have to worry about getting all my tasks done because I've left time for everything.
It's so funny, Lauren. I teach time management. I'm a business coach, but I do time management trainings and workshops. And one of the things I talk about is, my secret to time management, or my secret to getting things done, is I just write everything down. And I don't rely on my brain because, we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. 80% are negative and 98% repeat themselves every day. And so by writing everything down, it really makes things a lot easier. I always share a story that when people the story goes that people would ask Albert Einstein his phone number, and he would go to the phone book and look it up. And they would say, you're the smartest person in the world. You don't know your own phone number. And to which he would answer, I don't like to waste my brain power with information that's easily accessible. And to your point, writing things down makes things, easily accessible. But it is interesting. You're right. And you bring up a really good point that people go from a very structured high school world, typically, where it's kind of hour by hour and you have stuff, but you have to maybe get there early or stay late if you're in any clubs or sports or things. Everything is very, very structured to completely unstructured. Mm-hmm. How do schools fix that?
I think it's a good thing to not fix, honestly. I think it's a good thing for students to figure out on their own. There are really good feedback systems in college if you don't figure it out. So, if you never show up to class, you're not going to pass the exams and you're not going to get a good grade in class. So you learn, I need to prioritize showing up for class. Same with homework assignments. If you don't do them, you get a bad grade. And so that automatic system of feedback is there without being so hand-holdy that the student never learns how to do it on their own. I think it's better if students kind of struggle a little bit with that in college as opposed to struggling with it after college, because then the stakes become a lot higher when you actually have a job and are out there in the real world. So I don't think it's bad the way that it works right now. But one great thing we have here at Hillsdale is we all have academic advisors. You have to talk to them in advance about your class schedule. And so when I was signing up for classes my junior year, which was a very tough year, very busy year, I was able to go to my advisor and say, hey, I think this is going to be a lot, but do you think I can do it? And that person knows you, has talked to you, has often had you in class, and is able to say, yes, I think you can do this, and here's how, or no, I don't think you can, you need to reschedule. And so those people who can look at what you're doing and confirm that you're on the right track, those people are really helpful. So you're not just totally out to sea.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you for being so proactive and, identifying it and then doing something about it. And I think just, sharing that story will help so many people as well, because
Yeah.
it's so simple, it's complicated, but
Right,
it
exactly.
requires. Right. So let's talk about your podcast for a minute. So obviously I have a podcast. You're on it right now. I've had it for
Yes.
a long time, and you've been on the show before. I talk to when I'm talking to clients or whomever, I always talk about the power of a podcast because it's so good for so many reasons. You're ahead of the pack. What has your podcast? Tell everybody a little bit about your podcast, and then what the podcast has done for you as far as opening up doors or building your brand or things of that nature.
Yes. So I have a podcast called Grammar Minute, which is exactly what it sounds like, 60 seconds on a specific writing, grammar, or spelling rule. And it's supposed to be short, informative, entertaining. I don't want to demand too much of your time, especially because I'm at college and we all have things to do. But I want to be able to just share this information that I think is interesting and super useful in this tight format. And so you asked how this has opened doors. I want to say first how it's actually helped improve the work that I'm doing, because I think that's interesting as well. Grammar Minute is so short. Trying to get a complete thought into 60 seconds is actually quite difficult. And so it's made me a much better writer because I've learned how to be concise and also how to speak clearly in a short amount of time. And, you kind of get the rhythms right and you get practice, and that's been a lot of fun. And then how has it opened doors? Well, there's an interview component for Grammar Minute as well, where I have some longer episodes where I just talk to other authors and see what their journeys have been. That's really encouraging because eventually, if you talk to enough people, you'll find someone who's been in the same boat that you're in right now. And they can tell you, hey, I got through it and became a published author, and it was great. So you can kind of see your story fast forwarded and see that there's hope for all the things that you're doing. So that's great, especially in a creative field like writing, which is so uncertain a lot of the time. But then beyond that, it just really helps you make friends in the community because you're cold reaching out to people that you've probably never talked to before. But, you're inviting them on a podcast, you're inviting them into a conversation, and they're very willing to share their stories and a lot of truly valuable information. And it's not just you that gets that, you actually get to share it with other people. So building those relationships and creating that community has just been fantastic.
I love it. That's great. So I want to talk to you. You're so impressive. I want to talk to you about writing. You've been writing books since 13. You've had your first publishing contract at 13. Warsaw, your new book. We'll talk about that as well. But I want to talk about your process for writing. So I wrote a book many years ago, and one of the things that people say to me a lot is, God, I have a book inside of me. I have an idea for a book, and this and the other. What was the process? How did you go about writing the book? So can you share a little bit? I mean, you've written a lot of books. What's your process, and how do ideas flow to you?
Yes. So many of my books start, so I write fiction, you know this already. So many of my books start as kind of a disjointed idea that comes to me while I'm doing something completely different and not really looking for ideas. I'll be putting away the dishwasher and I'll think, well, what if the world worked in this completely different way? What would that look like and how would people respond to it? Or specifically here at Hillsdale, I'll be sitting in an economics class and we'll be talking about how some part of the market works, and I'll think, oh, what if it didn't work that way? Or what if there was this problem that the market had to solve? And how can I turn that into a story? So that's kind of how the ideas come to me in the first place. But once I have the idea, truly, like you said, the hardest part is just getting started. And for me, that is the first page. Once the first page is written, especially even the first sentence, I'm good for the rest of the time. For another 80,000 words, I'm good. It's that first page that's so hard. And I think, for me, it helps to just write chapter 1 at the top of the page, because then quite simply, there are already words on the page. You're not looking at just a blank screen. That's really helpful. And then to have an outline for at least the first chapter. I actually don't outline any of my books, but the outline for the first chapter is really helpful because then you have a roadmap. And again, you're not left just staring at a blank screen at your cursor blinking. That's kind of a joke among writers. We kind of look at that cursor and go, oh no, I don't really know where to go from here. But once you've got that first sentence in the first page, that will always be the thing you come back to the most in the editing process, because that is where you determine whether you're going to keep this reader and get them to buy your book, or whether they're going to leave the bookstore without this. And so that first page becomes the focal point for the rest of the story. And if you can kind of write everything else such that the theme of the entire book is reflected in that one first page, preferably even the first sentence, that's how you write a book that is clear and understandable and easy to enjoy.
I love what you're talking about, and kind of carries the through line of the book, because you have an anchor and a base. I'm curious, one of the things I found is I kind of outlined my book when I wrote it, or outlined of what I thought it would be. But once I started writing, the book kind of took a life of its own. It really, it kind of flowed through me in a way that I wasn't expecting. And I really loved that process. I haven't written a second book. I've sat down to write a couple, and I'll write like 2, 3, 4, 5,000 words. And then I'll think, this is not the type of book I want to write just yet. But I miss that process of it flowing through you. Is that how it works for you a little bit?
That is how it works for me. So the writing community, especially for fiction writers, is very split on whether you should outline a book or not. And ultimately, it just comes down to what works best for you. Yeah. For me, I find if I kind of know the beginning, the high middle point, and where I want it to end, that's enough for the rest to just kind of fill itself in. Again, we often joke as writers that our characters take on lives of their own and they start to do things that we don't expect. But I truly cannot tell you the number of times when my books that I'm writing have taken a twist that I did not see coming at all. Yeah. And I think one of the benefits of not outlining everything before you get there is that you kind of get to follow your own train of thought. Yeah. And you have more time to think about it. You have the entire time that it takes you to write a book, which for me is usually about a year or so, as opposed to just coming up with an outline in one sitting. So yeah. I find that when I don't outline, I tend to have better developed thoughts. And it's a really fun process watching the book kind of come to life, exactly like you described.
Yeah. Well, and I think you can kind of access a different piece of yourself too. It sounds like that's what you're saying. That's what I experienced as well. And that it was really fun. All right, let's talk about your new book. So
yes, I'm copying it right here. We're safe.
Okay. All right, good. Tell us about it.
Yes. So this is a young adult science fiction novel, as you can kind of tell by the cover. It is my 4th book. It's published with a company called Enclave Publishing, who is great. They specialize in science fiction and fantasy. And the way I like to describe this book in short order is that it is about a video game. The characters inside the video game are real people, but they don't realize that they're trapped inside a video game. And the people outside the game don't realize that they're playing with real people. And so this is all kind of a metaphor for the trolley problem, which is something I was introduced to in my first year of college. The classic trolley problem is a philosophical issue where the question is, do you have the right to harm fewer people in order to prevent a harm to a greater number of people? This is a big problem in economics and politics, obviously, because it has implications for how we vote and for war and things like that. So that's kind of the central theme in this book. But truly, it is about entertainment and also getting people to ask harder questions about those kinds of things.
Yeah. And so does the reader, as the author, do you pose those questions for the reader to think about it? Does it influence the way they, how they read it and their mindset? Talk a little bit about that.
So all of my books kind of have at least one central moral, economic, or political dilemma. They're all central to the plot in some way, but I never state the question directly. So you kind of have to just go through the story and you'll eventually figure out what is this central tension that the characters are wrestling with. And then I like to have characters on both sides of the issue so that the reader can see the outcome of taking different stances and kind of go, I agree with what this character did, or I don't agree with what this character did. And so kind of come to the conclusion by following the lives of the characters. Yeah. And that's fun for me as a writer too, because you get to write from lots of different perspectives and you get to follow a lot of different trains of thought. So it's just kind of fun to keep up with those threads. And yeah, as the reader, it's not so much that you go into it with a specifically stated question and a specifically advocated answer. It's more that you experience the story, you realize that this problem is at the center of the story, and then you get to decide who you agree with and don't agree with.
I love it. So I have a question. There's a lot of studies. Congratulations on your book.
Thank you.
I'm really excited for you. So there's a study after study right now talking about how people don't read, they skim,
Hmm. Yes.
and that people aren't reading as much. And to me, I can point to a small handful of things. In that small handful of things, reading and or even listening to books, but reading
Yes.
specifically has been a huge part of my um, personal and professional growth. I mean, you take somebody's knowledge and understanding of something, they put it into a book, and your whole life can change for whether it's 495 or 1995. It can
Yes.
shift and help you grow in so many ways, in business, in life. I mean, every element of it. So how do
Mhm.
we get people back to reading?
This is a good question. And as a writer whose livelihood depends on people reading, one that I think about a lot.
Yeah.
And I kind of went through a reading slump myself from maybe junior year of high school to sophomore year of college. So for 3 or 4 years, it was a lot harder for me to read. And I think what got me back into it was two things. One was just finding really high quality books to read. There are a lot of books put out on the market right now that are kind of just catering to what publishers think people want. And so they're repeats of the same story over and over and over. And
Yeah.
getting away from that mold, especially with, lesser known indie authors or new genres, is really, really fun. And that can be a way to break back into it. But another way I think is there's been a lot of talk on social media recently. You've got like Book Talk on TikTok and Bookstagram on Instagram. You've got people posting these beautiful pictures of their books, posting book reviews, posting, how much fun they're having while they're reading, and
Yeah.
kind of bringing this hobby more to people's attention as something that is desirable and is painted in a positive light. I think that's a really good trend, actually.
Yeah.
I'm not hugely pro social media in the sense that I try not to spend too much time there. But for things like this, where it opens your eyes to something new and encourages you to go out and try that, I think that's a great thing. And I definitely see that happening in the publishing industry right now. Lots of books are becoming better known because of social media, and not necessarily all of them deserve it. They're not all going to be classics of prize winning literature, but
Yeah.
they are bringing people back into this hobby and helping them rediscover it. And I think that's just a great thing.
That's great. I listen to more books. I read, I mean, I've read so many books and I love reading,
Mhm.
but over the last probably, I would say, 5, 10 years, I listen to more than I read, but I miss reading. I actually just decided I love listening to business books and psychology books, but at night, I don't want to read a business book or a psychology book.
Right.
Um, and I'm dyslexic, so sometimes when I'm reading like certain books, like novels, I can't follow all the characters if I stop and put it down. It's like I can't
Yeah.
always follow. But what I'm loving right now is I just bought and I'm reading the autobiographies of Abraham Lincoln, Benjamin Franklin, and Albert Einstein. And I'm loving reading autobiographies. So I've kind of replugged into my passion of actually reading a book um, through autobiographies. Um, so you're graduating college.
Yes.
What's next for Lauren Smith?
Yes, so a lot of adventures, I think, because I don't have a super clear path yet. But for the moment, I'll be going to work at Post Hill Press in Brentwood, Tennessee, which I think will be really fun. I'll get to work on both fiction and nonfiction, basically as an editor's assistant. So reading some manuscripts, doing some copywriting for the backs of the books, all of that will be super fun. And then after that, I don't know. I do want to keep up with my own writing and also keep up with the Grammar Minute podcast. So I'm sure that'll take up a lot of the spare time. I'm also looking at starting a radio show on economics because that's been such a huge part of my college life and something I would love to continue down the road. So the short answer is writing and radio, but we'll see
Yeah,
beyond that.
I think it's great. I think it's great. Economics. I think people need economics. I'm going to make an assumption. If you follow your grammar minute with some, making economics simple, uh,
Yes.
then to me, I think it's well needed today. There's so much for people to understand. To have somebody simplify it, I think is so important. There's a guy, I think he's called the Bowtie Economist, and his website is Econ70, Econ and the number 70, and he gives a review of what's going on in 70 words.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So I thought you would enjoy that. So I think it's great. I think it's great. There's there's a big gap that people need somebody who's smart and intelligent like you that can, break things down into the simple and give it to them, like your Grammar Minute podcast, which I love. I love that.
Well, there's so many terms, especially in economics, that are just kind of thrown around, especially in journalism. And I have been a journalist too, so I'm guilty of it as well. But there's so many terms that are thrown around, and people don't actually know what they mean.
Right.
We talk all the time about a trade deficit. What is a trade deficit? What does that actually mean for the economy?
Yeah.
These are things that need explaining. They're not immediately intuitive. And that's one of the great things about economics is once you get the basics down, the rest of it kind of becomes intuitive. But if you're never taught those basics, you can't just look at a graph and go, oh, this is going to happen to the economy.
Yeah, so. I think it's great. All right, quick speed round. A book, one of your favorite books, or a book that's had an impact on you?
Good question. I would say Elements of Style, which I know is probably a common answer that you get, but I've read it through several times now, and I find something new every single time. So Elements of Style, Struck in White.
Okay, good. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Ooh, I'm going to have to say exactly the same thing I said last time, which was a piece of wisdom from my dad. Risk, reward, do the risky thing if the reward is high enough, but always analyze both sides of the coin. That's something we talk about in economics a lot too, costs and benefits.
I love it. All right, finish this sentence. You have done a really great job at knowing what you're really great at and finding these lanes that you can excel and do what you love and help other people in the meantime, and create just great content for people to absorb and grow. And so what's one way people can kind of tap into that within themselves?
I think realizing that creativity is something that can be learned. It does not have to be something that you're born with immediately, and you don't have to be good at everything the first time you do it. So being willing to take that risk and accept that you might not be great at creating the thing you want to create, but accepting that if you do it, you will get better at it. That's a great thing. Especially with writing, people think it's very esoteric and hard to learn, but it's actually not. There are rules to it. It is very structured, and you can become good at it.
Yeah. Lauren, this is great. I always appreciate you being on the show and learning from you and talking with you. And Think Community, Lauren has been doing amazing things that, when I talk to people who are, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, they're always, I want to start a podcast. I want to write books. And, Lauren has done it, and she can teach us a lot about many things that you shared about today, but also what you said at the end, I think is really true. Just do it. And we learn by the doing. And there's studies out there that if you do something for about 18 minutes a day, then you can master it by the end of a year. And so Think Community, if there is something out there that you want to do, all you got to do is commit to the doing. And by doing it, you will grow, and you'll learn what you need to grow. You'll learn what you need to learn so you can grow and dive in. Lauren, tell everybody where they can buy your books and listen to the Grammar Minute and everything else.
Yes, so the Grammar Minute is easy. It's thegrammarminute.com. That has all the podcast links, so you'll find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else that you typically listen to podcasts. For the book, it's available directly through the publisher at a slight discount or through Amazon. The publisher is Enclave Publishing, or you can go to my website, which is laurensmithbooks.com. That's Smith spelled with a Y, and my fourth book is War Safe.
Amazing. Well, congratulations, Lauren, on everything. It's great to have you back. We'll have to have you back in, maybe 6 or 8 months after you're at your new gig. Congratulations on graduating. Congratulations on all your accomplishments, your books, your podcast. I'm excited to see everything that you're going to do and how you're going to help change and shape the world. Thanks so much. And
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Think Community. If you want to reach Lauren, go check out everything she shared with you to buy her books and listen to her podcast. If you want to chat about any business coaching, you can reach me at jondwoskin.com. Lauren, thanks so much.
Thank you.